go. All right, well, let me introduce myself and then I'll introduce our speaker for today's webinar. I'm Dr. Carrie Arnold, and I am the Program Director for Evidence-Based Coaching here at Fielding Graduate University. And for those I've not met yet, I'm sure I will have that opportunity at some point. I started in my role last June. Long-time fieldinger, been around fielding for about 20 years. And I'm delighted to introduce Laura, who's been around fielding a long time as well. She's been teaching in the evidence-based coaching program for at least a decade, if I remember correctly, maybe even a little bit longer. She's been part of it from basically the very beginning. A little bit more about Laura. She has 30 years of experience and research as an enterprise-wide coach. She is a master certified coach. She has her PhD. She's also a master corporate executive coach. And she is an MCC as a coach supervisor. Basically, she is as guru as it gets when it comes to coaching. And she got her PhD at Fielding. And so, we're always so delighted when our faculty, our alumni come back and continue to give back to Fielding in such deep and meaningful ways. And Laura's scholarship today is a really great example of that. She has done some groundbreaking work when it comes to teams and coaching and supervision. So Laura, I'm going to give the screen over to you, and I'm delighted to be part of your presentation.
Well, thank you, Carrie, for being such a wonderful host and support here for all of us. It's just so exciting to be here with everyone today. And I would just want to say welcome everyone from my home office here in the Los Angeles area. So wherever you are in the world, I'm so glad that technology can bring us together. And I see many names here and faces. We've known each other through Fielding and others, and it's just really exciting. It feels like coming home again, right? All of us Fielding colleagues and all of our wonderful connections that we have together with each other. So congratulations on making a decision to be here together. This session really is at that intersection of what Carrie was talking about in terms of I can talk a little bit more about the journey, but it's that intersection between coaching, teams, and supervision. And it's really exciting because bringing those three together really is the what's new. I remember years ago being asked by the ICF to fill their slot at the executive, coaching board. What do they call that? Gosh, in New York, what's it called, everybody? They have it in New York every year. So it's the conference board, and it was their coaching conference. And I was asked to come speak about what's new in coaching. And at that time, it was in coaching teams. So that has been coming along quite a ways. And now we're also looking at coaching supervision. So really bringing those together. So I'm really motivated to be here with you today because at my core, one of the things that I love is that I love to help develop people. I love to expand mindsets. I love to expand heart sets and like to expand skill sets. So we'll be doing that in those three areas and bringing that together today. Because I really believe that in doing that, and particularly with the work that we do in organizations, that is a way that we can really have a huge impact on the world, right? So have a huge impact by helping people be able to build healthy workplace cultures. And so that's what I have a passion to do. So I'm glad that we're all here today. I'm going to hear a little bit more about what your passion is and what motivated you to be here today. But for now, let me go ahead and let's see if I share my screen. Will my Zoom come back? I don't think I've shared my screen yet. Best laid planned. We actually practiced this ahead of time. And of course, now I've lost my Zoom link. So let's see. Let me go ahead and share my screen first, and then I'll put it on presentation mode for you. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Fantastic. All right, let's put it on presentation mode. So here we go, my friends.
Looks
So
great,
just,
Laura.
oh, thank you, Carrie. Great. Thanks for the confirmation. So just briefly, my career began back in the early 1990s. And believe it or not, in 1991, I was working internally. I was an assistant vice president for First Interstate Bank in downtown Los Angeles. I was actually coaching managers. And I also had the good fortune to be asked to help design and teach the leadership development program. And in that program, at that time, it's so fun to go back and look at my materials from then. There was a course in there that I designed and developed that was called Coaching for Improved Work Performance. Imagine that. This was back, think about it, folks. This was way back before the ICF was ever formed and before the European Mentoring and Coaching Council was ever formed. So after 30 years of practice and research, developing leaders and teams and professionals who support them, I just feel so blessed to have been able to be on this path. I didn't choose it. When I was younger, I didn't say this is what I want to do. It's like the path chose me. So in terms of forwarding to today, if we can do one at a time, that would be nice. Then what my primary focus is again, kind of going back to the mindsets, expanding the mindsets, because mindsets really matter. And for me, it really is also, it's about teams. So that's a way that we can unleash the power of people and organizations really to create those resilient company cultures. So I love to be able to develop others to be able to do that themselves, whether it be leaders or other professionals such as yourselves, to be able to do that. So with that in mind, I would love to find out what matters to you. So if you would go ahead and put in the chat, what's your motivation for being here today? So is it because you want to coach teams, or you're already coaching teams, want to learn more, or you're looking to supervise, or I don't know, there could be a myriad of things. So I'm curious, you could be anywhere right now in the world. So I'm curious as to what is it that motivated you to be here today?
So, Laura, I'll start sort of shouting out some of the answers. Some people are interested in helping teams achieve. Some are interested in actual team coaching, lots of team coaching, being more effective with team coaching, staying current with corporate settings, to support my sidekick, and walk away with a few tips for my team coaching efforts. I coach groups, have coached teams. I'm a huge fan of your work, so I got a fan.
Thank you, Kimberly.
I'm interested in bringing a coaching perspective to my consulting work with teams. Um, Mentoring graduate students and colleagues at work, interested about learning more about coaching teams. How do I apply this in some way to teams I am on? So pretty much a real good theme around just really wanting to better understand team coaching and probably some of those distinctions.
Yeah, fantastic. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Carrie, for bringing all of those forward. So you're all in the right place. So, this whole world, if you will, around coaching teams, and then adding supervision to it. It can be an ocean full. Today, we're gonna have a teacup full, but we are going to walk away really my hope is that you'll walk away with having your mind expanded beyond its original dimensions, and also that you will have more questions leaving than you had coming in. Have some new questions when you're leaving compared to when you came in, and that you're more motivated to continue to learn more. So with that in mind, then, I also will mention that I know that we are all interested in continued professional development. There's so much I know that you're learning already and that you've picked up on these last few days through this amazing conference that we have here that Fielding Graduate University has put on. It's just phenomenal. They're like the best of the best of these conferences. So at the end, I'll also share with you two additional professional development opportunities for you. So make sure you stay to the end so that you can learn about those as well. And the good news is that they're free. So it helps all of our pocketbooks, right? So with that in mind, then, let's see. Let's go ahead and take a look at kind of the structure for the where we're headed here today. So 4 outcomes, learning outcomes. One is to recognize the complexity of coaching teams compared to coaching individuals. Now, we could spend an entire day on this, but we'll spend a few minutes talking about why that is. Secondly, this is where we're going to spend a good deal of our time. It's really going to be very thought-provoking for us. And that is that as an outcome is that we'll take a look, I'll offer to you a real case study. It's a story of what actually happened to me in a very complex coaching engagement where there was a dirty little secret that was revealed. And it's like, whoa, what do I do with that? So we'll talk about that situation. I'll share it with you and I'll be asking you, so what would you do in that situation? And then I'll be glad to share with you some of what I did in that situation. We'll all learn from each other along the way. Thirdly, then in terms of supervision and how supervision can help in these complex team coaching engagements to help us with ourselves and internally what happens with us, and in turn be able to better help our clients. I'll share with you, give just a brief overview of supervision and what that is, and then also give you an overview of Peter Hawkin's 7-eyed model. And then lastly, what we'll be doing is, the learning outcome is we want to really better understand supervision as an essential professional development practice, again, when we're coaching in the context of teams. So that's where it is that we are headed. Sound good? Can I get a thumbs up, claps, or some sort of yay, I'm getting these, yay. All right, fantastic, thank you. I have 2 screens, by the way, so when I look over here, I can see you over there. So I'll be looking at both screens. So, and I know that you all will help me as we move along. So let's go ahead and come to outcome number 1, which is about recognizing the complexity of coaching teams compared to coaching individuals. Now, Carrie had mentioned that I did my doctoral research on coaching teams, and way back then, there was very little that was in the literature at all, and only some in the practitioner area. So one of the things that became very clear through my research and talking to my coaches, and there were very few coaches who were actually coaching teams, or a lot of people coaching individuals, but not teams. And what became very, very clear from their stories and their experiences, and then also with my practical experience, is that coaching teams is more complex than coaching individuals. But in terms of just a simple diagram as to what, or images as to what coaching individuals compared to teams looks like, right here, this is, can you see my cursor move or not move? When I point with my cursor, or you can see it, cool. So here where we see the 2 puzzle pieces coming together, this is like the coach and the client, and we're doing one-on-one coaching with each other, right? So we're kind of in the room or we're virtually. So we have one-on-one where the coach is coaching the individual. And then that should be also within the context of what else is going on. But one of the things that coaching has been criticized for over the years, including by Anthony Grant, Dr. Anthony Grant, who was on, I was very fortunate to have on my committee, said that in coaching, coaches tend to just bring in the individual, not the whole system that's around it that impacts that individual. So it's really important to take a systemic point of view. So this is one-on-one coaching. Then in terms of coaching a team, the coach, instead of just coaching the individual, here coaches the entire team. Now, the coach may also coach individual members one-on-one, but when you're team coaching, you are coaching the team. So for example, with one-on-one coaching, you would be coaching the person towards an individual goal, whereas here, the coach is coaching the goals, helping the team achieve its goals collectively. Excuse me. It's looking at the overall performance of the team and helping them collectively work together as a team. In terms of listening, here you tend to listen to one voice. Here, you're not only listening for all voices, but you're listening. There's a whole voice that comes out of the whole team. So it's a very different way of working. It's a very different way of listening. It's a very different way of coaching. So we could do a whole day session on this, but we don't have time today. But what I did want to do is just to go ahead and give you an overview of that. So let me just see if there's any questions or clarity around that at this time. You can let that go ahead and start populating. And as you do that, then again, coaching teams then really requires, and this is important, that coaching teams requires an additional set of team-specific knowledge, competence, tools, plus supervision compared to one-on-one coaching. And so when I'm doing my work internally in organizations in helping develop leaders and their teams and HR professionals to be able to develop the leaders in their teams, they need to have a solid foundation of coaching, right? Which many of you do, very, very solid base. So say, for example, Fielding's year-long evidence-based coaching program is phenomenal. So you got a really solid foundation for coaching. Now, if you want to coach teams, you can't just assume that you can now just coach teams. Why? Because it requires an additional set of very team-specific knowledge, competency, tools, and supervision compared to one-on-one. So Carrie, is there anything for us to attend to at this time?
No, not so far in the chat. You can charge ahead.
Thank you. All right, fantastic. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on then to outcome number 2. So what I'll do here is to share with you a real case study, and then we'll explore how supervision can help us navigate challenges, particularly in a multi-stakeholder team coaching engagement. And when we get into team coaching, as I said, team coaching is much more complex than coaching individuals. The stakes become exponentially higher. Issues around confidentiality can become very complex. So there's a lot for us to pay attention to there. So let's go ahead and get into the story. I'm going to go ahead and give you the backstory of a real situation that happened in this team coaching situation that I had. So what I'll do is give you the backstory. And as you're listening to the backstory, what I'd like for you to do is to be thinking about what would you do in this situation. Okay, so after I give you the backstory, then what we'll do is put you into small groups of about 5 people each. You can talk about what you were hearing, what was going on for you, and what you would consider doing next. Okay, so that's where we're headed. All right, so backstory. I received a call from the human resources director for an organization that I had worked for a few years, different levels in the organization, starting with the chairman of the board and his direct reports. So became familiar with the presidents of 4 different divisions and some of the vice presidents, et cetera. And it was just such a great learning experience for them to be able to come together as a team that I started getting calls to say, well, can you come work with this team? Can you come work with that team? So this was another call that I received. So the human resources business partner called and asked if I had the time to work with yet another team. It was the general manager and his team that were really struggling. So they were made up of representatives, if you will, from different parts of the rest of the organization. And they came together because they were like this elite team that was pulled together to develop a new software platform in transportation for their customers. So this was sort of like a one-off. This was like, whoa, this is really going to be taking things to the next level. So it's a very highly matrixed team. So they needed to go from being all-stars to an all-star team. They did have a clear business plan, and the goal was to grow the business by doubling the revenue to $30 million in 3 years' time. So the problem is that they had fallen behind in their goals, significantly behind. So she's given me some of this information, and she says, can you meet with the general manager? And I said, yes, great next step. Let's find out more of what's going on and see what the thoughts are and how I can be helpful. So met with the general manager and the HR business partner. So again, found that they had fallen way behind in their goals. The general manager said there were a lot of disconnects. People are pointing fingers at each other and blaming different people on the team as to why it is that they've fallen so far behind and weren't able to accomplish what they were needing to accomplish in their own areas. He said that we need to address this alignment like right away. And assume that it's not going to be a one-time event, but we're going to need to come in, figure out what's really going on, see the whole story, and then let's have an offsite to have real conversations about this and help us all get going in the same direction. So let's see. So together we came up with this general plan, and then the next step then, because again, this is coaching the team, and we need to look at things from a systemic point of view. I also wanted to talk to the sponsor, who was a senior vice president, right? Who was the sponsor for this group to be successful. And so he was also going to be the sponsor for the team coaching engagement. So the immediate next step was to meet with the sponsor, myself. And I thought the general manager was going to be there. It was going to be the sponsor, myself, and the general manager. And I thought it was really curious when we met that the general manager wasn't there. But it's like, things happen. Okay. So we meet, and the vice president basically told me the same story that the general manager did. And he says, but I also got to say that the general manager's lost the confidence of the executive board. And so, coaching the general manager and the team to get them aligned and back on track is like critical. We've got to get started on that. So we agreed to that. And we're just getting ready to finish up our conversation and say, yes, let's green light this. We'll move forward. But then there's more to the story. Just before we're finishing up, he says to me, oh, by the way, there's one more thing for you to know, and it's confidential. I said, yes, waiting with bated breath. What could this be about? He says, I'm currently in the second rounds of doing interviews to replace the general manager. So I said to him, the general manager didn't mention this to me when we chatted. And he said, he doesn't know. So with that, then, hearing this confidential information in the moment really put me in a bind. I don't know how you're feeling right now, but my solar plexus just like really tightened up. It's like ice skating in sand. All of a sudden it's like, whoa, what just happened? And so I really felt this ethical dilemma. And so I named it. And I said, from an ethical standpoint, it would be difficult for me to coach the general manager when I know he's going to be removed from his job, but he doesn't know. And is it possible that maybe through support, like coaching him, the team, that, there might be a different path? And VP assured me that, look, decision's already been made. There's no crossing back over the bridge. And we have to move forward. There's so much at stake with the organization. I'm so glad that you're here to help us. Got to run to the next meeting. Bye. So that's the situation. So the question is, what would you do? And what's going on for you right now? What would you do now that you've been told this dirty little secret that but the general manager who you're asked to coach doesn't know? So if you're in this situation, what would you do? I see some people kind of like taking a deep breath and tilting the head and go like, whoa, all right, well, have fun talking with each other. We're going to put you into breakout groups of about 5 people each. And while you're there, we're going to give you 12 minutes. So while you're in there, each person has 2 minutes each to go around and share while everyone else listens, because we're really good as coaches to listen and acknowledge each other. So if you're in this situation, what would you be thinking? What would you consider doing next? Okay. And then take the last, so that'll be 10 minutes because it's 2 minutes each. It'll be 10 minutes, the last 2 minutes, just kind of summarize and see what you might have in common. Come back prepared to share 1 to 3 things that you would consider doing in this situation. Okay. So Carrie,
Yep.
Ready when you are.
Okay. Yeah, Katie, I think you can resume.
Fantastic. All right. So we have everybody back and we're recording again. So we can't wait to hear your conversations in your room. So I believe we had about 4 breakout groups. So if we could have each group, someone from each group go ahead and share out what's the top 1, 2, or 3 things that you guys talked about in terms of what you might consider doing next.
Yeah, I think we nominated Kevin Norris to be our group spokesperson.
Cool. Hey, brother.
Hey, sister.
Good to see you.
I think, just overall, again, the whole ethical issue we agreed with and what probably would walk away from the engagement in terms of, another option would have been to do some assessment up front, kind of get the stakeholders in the room and talk about what does the data suggest. But again, how many of us have walked into engagements that we could not be successful? We took it despite that little small still voice that said, don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
The little voice would be screaming, right?
Yeah. Mine was screaming, yes. That is one thing that went through my mind. It's like, I think it's time to turn this one down. That went through my mind as well. Yep.
And alternately, Kevin, where did we end up?
Well, I guess the only other thing was maybe get some of the stakeholders in the room and talk about the issue, and then just observe how they talk about it would be just another form of assessment.
And further to that, we also suggested, I think we all agreed that shining some light on the situation would be helpful. And let's not take it for what it seems to be.
So shining light on the situation with whom? With whom specifically? So I've just finished talking with the sponsor, and he says, general manager doesn't know about this. It's confidential. So who do you have the conversation with?
Speaking for myself, because we didn't talk about audience, I would survey all of them. I'd get a sense of what's going on in the environment, and I'd have it sliced and diced so that I could look at the GM, senior leadership, and team together and apart.
Okay, thank you, Drew. Thank you, Kevin, and everyone in your group. Awesome. All right.
You have the best group.
It was the best group?
Well, that's what the survey said.
I see. Perfect. Well, let's see what the next also best group says. We're gonna have some competition going here. The next group might say we're the best of the best. So let's hear from group number 2, or however you want to name yourself. Who's next?
If you're willing to go to group 3.
Sure, let's do group 3. You bet.
Okay. We also started with, it was a question of ethics. We
Yep.
saw that if we began the engagement with the team, that it would become a question of trust. And so if we were to continue to work with this organization, we might want to see if they were open to beginning the engagement later on when they had done what they needed to do. And assuming that the sponsor gave permission, we would go back and have that conversation with HR.
Okay. Yep. So another key stakeholder that, who do we have conversations with? Because the HR person was already in, if you will. Okay. Yep. So also, it's an ethical issue. You would, offer, can we start later? Which I did bring that up with the sponsor, and he says, no, this is critical to the organization. We got to get going. I cannot wait 3 or 4 months until we hire the new general manager. We got to get going. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you, Kathy. So group number 2, group number 4.
Well, I was with group number 4. I guess I can.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, sure. We talked about, there could be a couple different things that could be done, and one of them is to get started with some data collection with the team, as opposed to doing much more. I personally just was mentioning that I've had zero luck starting with the group that then had a new manager come in, a new leader of any kind. So I like group 3's mention of HR. I think that would be really useful. And so I think it was either do some kind of minor data collection, checking out what's been going on, at least hear from some of the team members, and then try to figure out what you could do if you can delay it long enough till you got the new manager in. If you really want to do something. Yeah, pulling the ripcord was definitely the first reaction of us.
Yeah, so do some pushback and say, I really think that we do need to wait on this.
Run.
Or run away fast as you can. All right, great. Thanks, Karen, and everyone in group number 4. Do we have group number 2?
Sure.
Yes.
I'll share. So, we talked about what were you hired to do in terms of if the commitment was really to be coaching the team, was to obviously have a next conversation with the VP, but that was the task at hand. And so we would start with the data collection, interviewing the different members, and that ethically, we would need to hold those confidences. A couple of us also, saw the value of having our own coach, or specifically coach supervision, so that we could really maintain the confidentiality that we needed to, and that ultimately, right, that we are tasked with meeting each individual where they are and then trying to help the team move forward. So, so that was kind of what we got to, was being oriented to if the task was meant to work with the team versus coaching the general manager. It was a different ethical dilemma if you were hired to coach the general manager, and now that information was in there, that would have changed our approach.
Okay. Yeah. And I was asked to do both, coach the general manager and coach the team. Yeah. Yep. And in coaching the team, the general manager is part of the team, right?
The team.
That's
Yeah.
a glass of wine.
Or two. Well, that's kind of where I was. And it truly did. It truly, it was heart-wrenching and it was gut-wrenching to me. It's like, what do I do? Just as you were all talking about, do I walk away from this? Do I? So fortunately, just as I had all of you here being my supervisors today, fortunately, I also, in this situation that I had here of really feeling like I'm walking on a tightrope and I've got these, these big traps underneath. What do I do? What I did do is that I did call on my coach supervisor, and very fortunately, I already had a meeting scheduled with my supervisor, Peter Hawkins. So the timing was perfect. And it's just what I needed. It is just what I needed, because when we have these dilemmas that come up, it's really important to be able to resource ourselves and not put ourselves in isolation of trying to figure it all out ourselves. I remember years ago when Edgar Schein was one of my supervisors. Edgar Schein, the father of organization culture, and one of the things that he would say is like, when I would have a really complex situation that was really troubling me and trying to sort it out, and he would say, well, when you find that you've got a problem like that you're holding for the client, it's time to share it. It's time to share it back with the client system. But also it's really helpful to share it like with your supervisor, right? Or some trusted colleague who can be there to help you think through these dilemmas. And in this case, you all have done a great job of really identifying that this was an ethical dilemma. So with that, then I did meet with Peter. And let me see what I have up here next for you. Let's see, go forward. Taha. So in meeting with Peter.
Laura, we
Yes.
can't see your slides, just so you know.
Thank you. I love that you share that with me. Thank you, because I'm really talented at forgetting to share my slides. It's one of my gifts. Can you see it now? Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So here, I don't know if you got to see me, walking on a tightrope with the traps underneath. So in talking with Peter, and also was in a group supervision, we talked through this, and it really got some wonderful, insights in different ways to be thinking about the situation, such as we were talking about today. And so here are a few things that came out of that were really kind of the light bulb that went on for me. And one is Peter talks about in terms of supervision, and I put a capital V here for supervision. It is super, it's like to have this vision, right? That's just like, whoa. So he talked about reframing. The coach's job is not to tell or to ask. Coach's job is to reframe the challenge. Isn't that fascinating? If we think about reframing the challenge, what can that do? That can then liberate ourselves and liberate the client, whoever we're talking with in the moment, can liberate us to be able to see things in a different light, and then orchestrate how to collectively, and that word collectively, how collectively we can address that challenge. So another thing that I've learned over the years from Peter is he talks about in coaching, particularly when we're talking about systemic coaching, not just this one-to-one, but this is about looking at the whole system, and we need to look at the whole system. coach the spaces between. So coach the space between the different key stakeholders. And he said, and having the conversations in the right order is important. So, right, so and where we were in the story that I was sharing with you, the right order of the system would be to have to coach the space between, in this case, between me and the VP, right? So we need to start there to do some reframing of this so that collectively we can address this challenge. Then to also coach the space between the VP and the general manager to help reframe this challenge and orchestrate how to work collectively to address the challenge. And then also help the general manager, coaching that space between the general manager and the team, and also with other key stakeholders in the organization. And this story is so rich, we don't have time to go into some of these other key stakeholders and what was happening in sales compared to, we don't have time to go there, but it was very, very complex. So there was a lot to take into consideration. So with that then, I can say that this ethical dilemma that I was holding in my solar plexus just kind of relaxed, to where I could then invite a conversation with the vice president. I should have added another bullet point here. The very first bullet point was the conversation, coaching the space between me and the vice president and doing a reframe just even between us. So what I did do is I invited a conversation with him about, go, no go on this coaching engagement. I didn't pose it that way, but inside of me, that's where I was. And I invited the conversation by first starting to acknowledge to him and let him know, like, I'm on your side. So I needed to take myself away from, in my mind, you're doing the wrong thing. You shouldn't be doing that. I just started by meeting with him where he was. So, I said things like, look, I'm on your side. I get it. You've got this, this urgent business need. You got to fill this gap. You've got to get the team aligned and motivated. And you can't wait 3 or 4 months. I get it. So then I reframed the problem from the problem is the general manager to reframing it to also reframing it as an organizational challenge. So we had a conversation about when he does bring in a new general manager, is the general manager then just going to be experiencing the same thing that this general manager is experiencing? Because there are other factors that are going on that are impacting this general manager's ability for these folks to be working together well on the team rather than pointing fingers. There were things going on such as the reward system. Sales was being rewarded for just going to make a sale, but then could blame operations and say, well, you're not getting it up. And operations says, well, but I can't even get logos from the marketing department in order to put up simple things like that, just even to put up on our website. So there are organizational things. So once then I helped reframe it, that it's not just the general manager problem, but also there's a broader organizational issue that if that doesn't get addressed, what are the implications then for the success for the new general manager? We then also looked at the core challenge and came up, started talking about other challenges and opportunities. And so I started engaging him in a conversation about, who needs to be in the room to address this? So we're co-creating it together. So you see how I was reframing the problem? That then it freed him up from just saying, it's just a general manager and I can't tell him. So we started the conversation about who needs to be in the room for this challenge to be addressed. And engaged him in some visioning about the future. What is it that he wants? What does he want the executive board to say about how this got turned around so well and so quickly? Imagine yourself 6 months out. How did this get turned around? What is it you want the board to say? What do you want the general manager to say in a way that also help him save face, help him be whole, and help him be successful on this next part of his career? What do you want the team to say about 6 months from now, about where they are and how this transformation took place? So so that's where we ended up in the conversation. And with that, then the general manager came to the conclusion himself that, yeah, I really do. I'm going to sit down with the general manager. I do want to have a conversation with him. And together, the vision that we were holding was to help the general manager be part and parcel of this transition for himself, and also help orient and onboard the new general manager if he chose to, and give him some options, give the general manager options to be a part of the solution. So that's is where there's a lot more to the story, but in terms of this ethical dilemma, this is this part of the story that really helped release and get us out of the ethical dilemma by reframing it in another way as to what needed to be addressed. So again, coaching teams requires an additional set of team-specific knowledge, competence, tools, compared to one-on-one, plus supervision. Yeah. And so I've got a real, as you can tell, a real passion for this. And that's why through my research over the years, my practice over the years, that I've developed the team coaching operating system to really help people, have that toolbox, right? To have that mindset, that heart set, and the tools, the models, the assessments, and all that they need to be successful in creating these healthy workplace cultures.
Laura, are you taking questions right now?
Sure, be glad to. And then we'll move on from there, as we'll talk a little bit more about what is supervision.
So Jackie has her hand up.
So Laura,
Sure.
that was my exact question, because it came up in our small group, and I had an ethical dilemma situation similar to yours, and specifically worked with a coach who was doing coach supervision versus my regular coach. So I was hoping you could address that.
Address coaching supervision for teams.
Just the distinction for me, like I had a real distinction of using coach supervision for myself versus just working with a coach to help me unravel the dilemma. And the difference for me was that I worked with Terry Hildebrand, who many of you know. And right, so Terry went through a specific process, a coaching supervision process to help me unravel my ethical dilemma. And part of that was really valuable was that because this dilemma triggered some things in me from when I had been a leader, and like what was ethical, what should be happening, right? Like this wasn't right, all those things. And so I was able to work through that with him, get clear on what my commitment was to the contract and confidentiality. And then I negotiated it similar to what you did, right? Where then I reframed it and coached in that space in between the relationships to move it forward.
Beautiful. Well, you did a really wonderful summary, Jackie, about supervision, how it works, and the benefit and value that it does have. And I'd be glad to go into that next if anyone, unless there's any other questions to address. So thank you, Jackie, for bringing that up. Anything else, Carrie, for us to attend to? All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on then to learning outcome number 3. Let's go ahead and take a look at supervision. What is it? And Hawkin seven-eyed supervision model, and I know that Terry is well trained in this as well, and I'm sure that showed up, Jackie, in your own experience of working with a supervisor. So what is coaching? Supervision. So back in 2009, Passmore and McGoldrick came up with this dash. They put the dash in here, supervision, because that's what it is. It's about helping you have this supervision to be able to do those things, such as I was talking about, such as reframing the challenge and how that can free you up and how that can free up your clients. So it's one way to think about it. Here, particularly in North America, there tends to be an aversion to supervision, thinking it's command, control, and I'm being told what to do. But really the notion is, particularly from the European perspective, and that supervision's really big in Europe, and it's starting to become more known for its value here. So it's that helping you have that supervision. So in terms of definitions, you can read these for yourselves. I put up here the International Coach Federation, a definition for supervision, and the European Mentoring and Coaching Council's definition of supervision. So you can see I bolded some language here for you that both talk about it's a collaborative learning environment. It is about reflection. It's having a reflective dialogue about what's going on for you as the coach in relation to what's going on with your client, and it helps really benefit both the coaches and the clients. So then a lot of times I'll get a question about, so how is supervision different from mentoring? So one way to think about it is that mentor coaching is about developing the coach's knowledge and core competencies and get feedback on, like how well are you demonstrating the core competencies in your coaching with your client. So sometimes it might be sending in those recordings, have those listened to, we can sit down and we can review, where do those core competencies show up. Supervision, on the other hand, is more about, as Jackie was saying, is processing your own experiences and dilemmas, such as I did with Peter. I went in just really, it was gut-wrenching to me, and I really needed help talking it through, figuring out what was going on for me with this ethical dilemma, and then what to do with it in a way then can support the growth and improved outcomes for the client. I was just on a phone call with a dear friend, Lily Sato. Actually, Lily was one of my fielding students a gazillion years ago, and was really interested in team coaching, and she's gone on and is a wonderful supervisor herself. One of the ways that she says it is that mentoring is about how you coach. Coaching supervision is who you are. Kind of, it's your being as a coach, what's going on for you in relation to that. So with that, there's lots of benefits. I think that out of today's conversation, with the conversations that you had with each other, you probably have some thoughts from today's conversation, and maybe even through your own experiences with supervision. So go ahead and take just a moment and put in the chat box, what benefits have you experienced or want to experience from coaching supervision, knowing what you now know? So let's just go ahead and start dropping some things into the chat box. So Carrie, you want to?
Yeah, we're still, let's see. Comments are still starting to come in. Mm-hmm. Being able to reframe challenges I experienced, and then clarity of my ethical obligations.
Oh, two huge ones. Yep. Excellent. All right.
maintaining confidentiality, and fostering trust.
Mm-hmm. That also gets back to the ethics, doesn't it? Yep, nice. Mm-hmm. And to be able to do it with, with an objective party, right? And it takes us out of that isolation. Awesome. Okay, keep them coming.
See, subjectively, objective feedback about me and my coaching, being clear on who I am serving based on my engagement contract, processing the session and confidentiality.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. All right. Well, keep those coming in, and I'll also share a list here that I have as well, and I think a lot of yours are already showing up here. And if we're missing anything, let me know, and we'll just add it to the list. So we can see those things, such as we've talked about ethical issues, and within that also is the confidentiality. And in this particular case, the story that I was telling here, even with the contracting challenges, right? Yeah. To process your own internal thought processes and assumptions, reveal your own blind spots, increase your own awareness, reduces the sense of isolation, increases your resourcefulness, and a place to also appreciate and celebrate the accomplishments and the growth and the development of the coach, and also celebrate the accomplishment of client outcomes. Yeah, fantastic, beautiful. Yep. So coming from the School of PV, it helps to think about not asking, but reframing. Yeah, great. All right, excellent. So see, Kathleen's also talking about another experience, and yeah, Kimberly, blind spots, excellent. So there's lots of benefits. Thank you for participating and sharing that. So there are many models out there for supervision, and it draws from a whole background in terms of human development, to Gestalt, to many different theories and backgrounds. One of the models that is most often used and is easy to follow, if you will, is Hawkin's 7-eyed model of supervision. So it's looking at these multiple levels. So like 1 through 7, a lot of times it's flipped upside down, where you start from the bottom and work your way up. In any event, it's about talking. And then level 1's kind of the simple one. We kind of get started by having a conversation about, so what is the situation, right? So I could, like the background story that I brought in. What's happening with the client? What's going on? What's going on with me? Level 2 is about, so the supervisor, we'd be exploring then, what have I actually done? Such as a couple of things that I did in the moment with the client, and asked about other options, to postpone. And that's some of what you all came up with. What if we postpone this until the new manager, general manager, comes on board? Then also looking at the relationship between the coach and the client. So it's a relationship between me and my story, my situation, between me and the sponsor. And what's going on with my own self-awareness, that I'm feeling stuck. I mean, it's just in my gut, it's heart-wrenching. What am I learning about myself with that? Where have I gotten stuck like that before? Then also looking at the relationship between the coach and the supervisor, including any parallel processes that might be going on there as well. Next level then also can be, what's the supervisor's reactions and reflections based on this situation? And then also it's looking at that broader context. And we talked a lot today about what is the broader context. So you can learn more about this model. You Google it. Also, Hawkins and, I don't know if I can get my fingers on it, Peter Hawkins and Eve Turner have a new book out called Systemic Coaching from Rutledge. So you might want to take a look at that as well. It's an excellent resource. In terms of the wider context, Turner and Hawkins talk about 4 levels of the wider context. I'll throw this up here just so you can take a look at it. Don't let it scare you. It looks quite complicated, but it basically are these 4 levels here or these 7 levels here. And then they talk about, for the 7th area, about the wider context. It's that immediate context that's going on, such as the story. It's also looking at the stakeholders of those clients, the practitioner, the supervisor. It's also looking at the social and cultural context going on between all the parties. And then also looking at the ecological context, even what we have going on right now in our environment, such as, climate, for example, right? So what's happening there in relation to what's going on with you and the client system. So if you haven't been introduced to this, I wanted to introduce it to you as another way to tickle your brain and expand your mind as well about the value and use of supervision. With that in mind, I did want to mention, I noticed I mentioned earlier in the beginning a couple of professional development opportunities. Since we're talking about the broader ecological system, it's like, what does that mean? Well, there's an organization formed about a year ago. It's called the Climate Coaching Alliance. Eve Turner is one of the co-founders. So as I mentioned, Eve Turner and Peter Hawkins here, if you can see that. So Eve is one of the co-founders of the Climate Coaching Alliance. And they have, do I have it on here? Can you see it? They've got a 24, can you see it on the bottom? They have a 24-hour conversation, a conference that's taking place on March the 4th. You can look them up online. And Carrie, I think I'd mentioned Eve Turner to you before, thinking about our May conference, I think. She would be excellent. So this really is about, helping us look really at the broad system, right? And it's amazing that within 1 year, their membership, just by simply putting it out there, and it's free, and it's about having a shared vision for what is it that we can do, in coaching if we truly are taking a systemic view. How can we also pay attention to what's going on with the climate and help our clients be looking at that as well. So if that's something you're interested in, I wanted to share that with you. So, and it's free. In 1 year, their membership's grown over 650 people. It's incredible. Yeah, so there's a lot of interest. So once again, I'm really hitting home the notion here of, coaching teams requires an additional set of team-specific knowledge, competence, tools compared to one-on-one coaching, and that includes the need for supervision. So that brings us to learning outcome number 4. Let me check our time. Learning outcome number 4 is we doing good? Good, Carrie? We have 10 minutes? Thank you. Is to understand supervision as an essential professional development practice. And that's what we've been talking about really the whole time that we've been together here. So what I'd like to do is just offer you a couple of quotes and then give you a moment to reflect on for yourself what you're getting out of today's session. So one of my favorite quotes that was given to me by one of my coaching students, team coaching students, actually. He said to me, he sent me a thank you note after finishing one of my team coaching essentials courses, a 12-week course. And he sent me a thank you note, which I will keep forever. And he said, what you did for me is what Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. said many years ago, that a mind that is stretched by a new experience can never go back to its old dimensions. And he says, my mind, after working with you, cannot go back to its old dimensions. Then I also say to my clients and others who I support that leaders of teams and professionals who support them really deserve to know what it takes for teams and and for coaches as well, to succeed. Because if you don't know what you don't know, then what? So I invite us, as we start wrapping up here today, to, I don't know if we have time to go into breakout rooms, Carrie, what I'd like to know from people is, how has your mind been stretched during our time together today? And what's going on in your own coaching practice right now that could benefit from coaching supervision? So I'm in the moment, Carrie, wondering in terms of time, if we might put them in breakout rooms, or maybe just ask for some thoughts.
Why don't we ask for maybe 2 people to share in the larger group around maybe how your mind's been stretched, and or who could benefit from coaching supervision, and it might be helpful.
Great. Awesome. Okay. Who'd be willing to do that?
Well, if I may speak up.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Hi.
Hi, we saw you. You're the very first person to arrive today.
I was very excited to be here. Whether you're coaching teams or coaching one-on-one, I think that it's very important to have supervision. And regardless, because it's important to have that feedback and to get that that feedback from someone other than yourself, as to how you're interacting with your clients. I'm not being very articulate. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm sorry.
No, I think you're very, very articulate. The message that I'm hearing from you, Kimberly, that I fully agree with is that supervision is really important to have, whether it's coaching a team or coaching an individual, because we all need to have that sounding board and support to help us work through whatever these dilemmas may be. Did I capture it right?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Who's next?
I can say one really quick, but the mind stretch today was a very obvious in the breakout room, because I was thinking the dilemma and how I would research by myself to try to figure out what to do next. So not working in isolation, that was like, duh.
Beautiful. Thank you, Astrid. Thank you, Astrid. And you have so many wonderful people, you're surrounded with and fielding with the coaching program. It's so wonderful, that the bonds that get created there. Thank you, Astrid. Okay. Anyone else? One more.
I just have a quick one. I had volunteered, someone who was finishing up the fielding program was looking for pro bono hours, to accumulate for his certificate. And so I volunteered to be coached by him. And I'm wondering if you think that is a different flavor of perhaps coaching supervision, because what we ended up doing was he became a supervisor for me. While he was getting his hours, I was using a couple of real life coaching situations where I met with him every week for a number of weeks that he needed, and we talked about my client and what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds as though he was coaching you, if you will, or / supervising you based on what was going on for you in relation to your client, rather than wasn't mentor coaching you on the competencies, right? And he wasn't coaching you on your own, let's say, life dilemma, or at work I've got I'm trying to delegate and it's not working so well. Yeah, so it does sound as though it had a flavor of supervision.
Yeah, he said that was the first time he'd ever done that. No way. It was
how great that he could experiment and you'd be willing to be there to support him. So it did sound like it had a supervision flavor to it, rather than a coaching flavor to it. A coach approach, of course, to supervision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you, Karen. Awesome. All right, my friends. Very good. Well, I think we've been in our Q&As. Carrie, might this be a good time to see if we have any other questions and answers, and we'll just wrap it up here, and I'll offer one more professional development bonus opportunity for you all.
Yeah, no, I don't see any additional questions, and I believe this might be the last session for today. I'm not sure if there's another one or not, but I think folks are zoomed. So yeah, I think we can wrap up.
I was going to make an offer of one more, like I talked about the climate coaching organization. Glad to offer one more as well, and just end by saying saying that I think you've got a sense of my passion. I have a sense of your passion, and I certainly have a passion of helping leaders and teams and the professionals such as yourself to support them to really know what it takes to help teams succeed and the importance of supervision. So I hope that you've taken away as much today as I've taken away from you, and would love to continue the conversation to continue to learn and grow together. And with that, the second professional development opportunity for you is that there's a 1-hour webinar coming up on February the 19th. Since we're talking about teams and unleashing the power of teams, there is a new assessment called it's based on Patrick Lencioni's 5 behaviors model, and has an assessment for individual team members. So if you want to learn more about that, let's see, you can just go ahead and email me and I can send you the link, because I don't see anything here for you to do that. So I can send you the link for you to get registered. Okay. So just go ahead and email me directly, laura@leadership-strategies.com, which I believe is, so just do laura@leadership-strategies.com and I'll get that information to you. So my pleasure to be with you all. Let's keep in touch and continue to make a difference in the world. So Carrie, back over to you.
Yeah, so for those who are doing additional sessions with the different schools, enjoy. I know there's lots of great content. It was good to see all of you, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.